Hey guys, this is my 10.11 support tier list. As you can probably see on to my left, or well actually technically it's to my right, your left, your Twitch chat scrolling through. So if you guys want to say hello to people watching on YouTube, feel free to say hello and make sure you behave yourselves. So this patch is bringing in a lot of AD carry changes. So not so much support. The one little thing would be a Janna and a Lux change. Janna nerf, really, but not by much, and a Lux buff. We'll go through those once we meet those champions. AD carries are getting buffed across the board, so they're all getting flat health increase and a health per level increase. A couple champions that we should mention that are getting buffed before we carry on is Vayne and Lucian. So we could see increased play rates of those, and I've done my best to kind of showcase that, but some of the support champions that do well with those champions have yet to increase in power. In 10.12, however, there seems to be a lot of interesting engage tank kind of support buffs and changes. So we'll have to wait properly until that patch comes out to see where a lot of these supports are going to be, because even though all of the supports right now aren't being changed, they will be changed in terms of runes and things in the next patch. So there's a lot of things that could minorly like slip through. Usually I'm pretty reliable in getting my tier lists out, but when it's an overall buff for my AD carry, which I don't believe has happened to my recollection, not really, not in the middle of the season. The last kind of like last dramatic AD carry change was season, I think it was season 9, or it was mid-season, either 8 or 9, where they got nerfed and then AD carries weren't played. That was like the last big kind of like gutting of AD carries. But this one's an overall buff, so it's going to be interesting to try and place a few of these champions. As you can see on the tier 5 and tier 4, same kind of champions. I think I did slip 1 or 2 up to tier 3 that were in tier 4. But yeah, this is the champions pool that you probably shouldn't be playing right now. Especially in tier 5. Like, we can kind of like just skip over tier 5. Behind me is Anivia. Don't play Teemo. Don't do that. But yeah, everything down here is just not worth it. Like, I've had like YouTube comments recently saying like, why isn't Zoe up there stronger and things like that. It's just like, you could play it. Sure, you can definitely do that, but do I recommend it? No, definitely not. Moving up to tier 4, there are some picks there that are generally still involved in the support meta, like Rakan. I know a few people play Vel'Koz. Shaco AP, I know it's being played by a lot of different Shaco one trick kind of content creators out there. Shen as well, those are like probably the most standout ones in tier 4. There are a lot of champions here that I would say if you have experience with them in the primary role, like Vel'Koz mid, Gragas jungle, Shaco jungle, Veigar mid, Shen top, Poppy top, Neeko mid, Tahm Kench, I mean, he's just kind of like sort of dead right now, or Galio mid. Those champions are okay to bring in to bot lane if you're learning the support role. These champions are generally really good for you if you are moving to the support role as a new player and you just have a lot of familiarity with those champions, because they can kind of be played as support. It'll give you a good starting point, but after that I wouldn't really recommend it past that point. Then you should move on to learning some of the other stuff, at least in tier 3 above. So by all means, these champions aren't like terrible as long as you have that experience that you need across. Rakan is the only one I didn't mention there because he's like also a support, but with a Zai he's like tier 3. Without Zai he's tier 4. He's not worth it at all, and the reason why he hasn't been buffed is because he got nerfed ages ago regarding professional play. So he's a really strong champion when he's in the right spot in terms of balancing. So there's a fine line. He's either like really OP or really bad. And right now we're in the really bad patch. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe Zai will get like a gigantic buff, more so than this patch, an individual buff, and then maybe he'll get moved up because of that even more. But we'll see. So moving on to tier 3. I did move 1 or 2 champions around. Not sure if you can spot them. So if you remember from the tier list before, if you do remember, Nautilus and Braum were actually tier 4. We've moved those two up, primarily because of Lucian buff that's happening. So Lucian's his passive is getting buffed, and with these like Braum and Nautilus, and generally like CC champions, like if you catch someone out, like 9 times out of 10, the health increase that they're going to be getting won't matter that much. Sure, they might survive, but it's extremely unlikely, because if you positionally outplay someone, they're usually just dead, and it usually just takes an extra like 0.1 more auto to kill them, basically. So yeah, the engaged champions, especially with the rune changes that are going to be coming in 2 weeks time, I know it isn't in this patch, will also shake some things up. So at the moment, I think the poke champions will start decreasing slightly, and the engaged champions will start increasing over the next few weeks. So yeah, that's where this is kind of like heading. Lux was tier 3 last patch. She's getting a buff this patch, which is increasing her slow on her E from 0.25 seconds to 1 second. Now, that's the only change. Do I think it's going to help? A tiny bit. But it's more about, it's going to set up your AD carry and your team for skill shots, more so than for yourself. So it could work well with like a Jhin W or a Varus Q. Varus is pretty meta right now with Lethality Varus. So the Lux Varus combo will be stronger because of this. But honestly, across the board, it kind of kept her in tier 3, if I'm honest. I think she could have dipped down to tier 4 without this buff, with what's happening right now. Especially with like kind of like poke not being slightly worth a little bit less. Just a little bit. So she could have been dipped down to tier 4, but this slow increase is nice. She stays in tier 3 for now, and we'll have to reevaluate going into the next patch. It's just her play rate is really low. I'm playing her occasionally on stream. I uploaded a couple Lux videos recently just to test her out and see how she feels now, then testing her when we go into the next patch. So I'll update further with my games going into 10.11. But honestly, I think she's just going to be like a middle tier champion. Kind of like in some of those tier 4s, how if you have experience playing Lux mid, you could definitely do it as support as well. And then, I mean, like Pyke as well. I was considering moving him down to tier 4, because if AD carry's health are being increased, it's going to be more difficult for his execute. But on the flip side, it kind of helps Pyke in a way. Because sometimes if you have a lot of assassins on your team, and then the enemy AD carry would go like from 50% health to 0, and you have no opportunity there to ulti. So this health change might actually give you a better ult window. So it's really funny how it kind of benefits Pyke a little bit, and at the same time doesn't. So if you have more assassins on your team, then Pyke will actually be worth a little bit higher than he would be. But without an extra assassin on your team, then maybe it's slightly lower. I hope that makes sense. But it's a really awkward situation in terms of that. Anything else really to make there? I mean, like Maokai, if you play Maokai top, you can bring that down into bot lane. Like Maokai Lucian is now looking something quite strong. I think Lucian is going to be one of the biggest bully AD carries coming into patch 10.11. Definitely, I would be surprised not to see a higher play rate increase on that. And the same with the Vayne as well, which you'll see with some champions up above, which will escalate her up even more. But yeah, Maokai Lucian definitely could be a possibility, and we'll give it a whirl if we see a Lucian, some form of hard engage with that Lucian could be pretty interesting. And that's the whole reason why Braum's moved up slightly as well. Braum, you know, AD carries being slightly stronger, should be getting a little bit more of the auto hits off onto passive targets. An extra hit maybe can make all the difference to destinate that. So we're in a very interesting situation right now. Moving up to tier 2. Now, you might notice that usually my tier list is quite like, there's a few champions up top, and then it's like spread out like a literal pyramid. But right now, it's becoming a lot more flat at the top. It's getting harder and harder to identify which supports are actually stronger than the rest, to put it that way. So Swain, I've moved down from tier 1 into tier 2. I still think he's really, really good. Really good to cheese. Just that the AD carry health increase. Swain kill potential in lane is kind of strange because you do need to do some whistling down, getting them down to about 50%, 40% HP, and then executing them off on that before they, you know, recall. There's been a lot of occasions when playing Swain where it's been about 20 health-ish overkill on a lot of the kills. And I can imagine if you play Swain, you will come across more circumstances where the AD carry will actually live. You might see that on some of the other champions as well. So it could cost you 300, 600 gold in lane because the enemy gets away. So I put him down slightly. We'll reevaluate after the patch, but I do feel like he's got slightly weaker from this. Leona works really well with like Lucian still. Solid tier 2. Was considering moving up to tier 1, but probably entering more of that tier 1 status in 1.12. Senna, it did not receive the AD carry health buff. Senna's regarded more as a support as an AD carry. She was the only ranged AD that didn't get the health buff. She's still pretty squishy in lane. Still feel she's incredibly good, but she definitely lost some of her power this patch. So we'll have to monitor that and see how that goes. I do feel like she's still pretty strong, as I said, especially against champions that she can definitely scale off, like the Yuumi. You get by the Executioner super early. Basically, she works really nicely into any enchanter, and you can probably gather right now the enchanters are in that tier 1, tier 2 category. So Senna does pretty well against what I would regard as the meta supports right now. So there's a good counter into a lot of those. But she will suffer against that hard engage, especially if there's like a Lucian on an enemy team now, that you're going to have to be very wary of that. Janna received a W nerf, but it's really not that bad. The damage on level 1 is exactly the same, and then every point after that, the damage from the W gets less and less. But honestly, you really shouldn't be putting more than like 3 points in W on Janna, in my opinion. So you're only losing a tiny amount of damage, and everything else is the same. So I think she's going to be useful against some of the hard engage that's going to start coming up more. But I don't think like losing a tiny, I guess adding that damage up and the enemy AD carry health might seem a bit more of a difference, but overall losing 5 damage, 10 damage on a W is nothing crazy when her kit is extremely safe anyway. So don't worry about that if you do like playing Janna. Bard tier 2, still a very good champion if you have a lot of experience in him. Roam is the key to how to play him. If you don't roam on him, if you're bad at roaming, then he goes all the way down to like tier 3/tier 4. You have to utilize the roaming. So depending on how good you are at roaming, Bard will prevail. Also, there's some mechanical skill there as well. So do factor that in when you're playing Bard or wanting to play Bard. If you're not very good at roaming, then avoid it and play something more like Leona to learn the roaming style first. Taric did receive a nerf blast patch on his W, so less armor on the later levels. Kind of similar to how Janna's getting nerfed this patch, but much more dramatic. Now Taric is a funny one. He does really well into hard engage, like full stop. He beats pretty much any hard engage support. So with that meta coming through a bit more, Taric will become stronger anyway. What I will say though is if you do look at win rates on any of these websites that do provide those kind of statistics, especially if you look at Plat Plus, Taric's win rates will always be higher because of the Taric Master Yi funnel. So its win ratios on him and Master Yi are unreliable, to say the least. However, as what I previously just said, if you know you're playing against the hard engage, and if you like playing Taric, he's definitely a really good option. Anyway, got a couple of Taric games on the YouTube channel for Taric versus like Nautilus, and you win that lane like 99% of the time. It would have to take a dramatic jungle gank for you to lose that lane. Lulu got buffed because of Vayne. Indirect buff. But Vayne's stronger now, so Lulu has more value. She was tier 3, now she's tier 2. As always, only play Lulu with hyper carries, but now one of the hyper carries has got buffed, being Vayne. Vayne's more popular than Kog'Maw as well. So you're going to see probably more Vayne players in this patch. And Lulu is perfect for Vayne with all the buffs that she can give to an auto-attacking champion. So Lulu Vayne now just got a bit stronger. And yeah, win ratios are decent as well. So she's now rightly moved up into tier 2 because of that. I was kind of just waiting for one of these hyper carries to get buffed. It was going to happen, the Vayne or a Kog'Maw at some point. And Thresh also got moved up from tier 3 to tier 2. Primarily, as I said about early lane aggression, will usually win out these laning phases out a little bit more. If you are caught out positionally pretty badly, especially if like Thresh gets a flay on a dash target like a Tristana. Tristana did also receive a little buff, so she might get a tiny bit more play rate. Thresh is extremely good against Tristana. If you can time your flay to her rocket jump properly, you can cancel that animation completely. So Thresh moved up slightly because of that. He is on the teeter edge between tier 3 and tier 2, but he's moved up nonetheless. So you guys ready for tier 1? Hope you guys are ready for tier 1. Not too much has changed, as you can probably work out. Let's have a look up here. So tier 1, you got Zyra still, Sona, Soraka, Nami, Blitzcrank, Yuumi. Basically the same as last patch minus the Swain. Yuumi, if I had to pick one of the champions here that was absolutely the strongest right now, I would say that Yuumi is probably the best support in the entire game, but not enough to like say that she's like tier S+. But I would say she's probably the strongest candidate there if I had to choose one of those. Laning phase, like because now your AD carry has more health, it doesn't mean they're more likely to survive. So it means that it will buy you time as well to jump off your AD carry and get away, if that ever happens as well. So laning phase just got a little bit safer for Yuumi. You're not gonna be, when you're playing Yuumi, you don't aim to get a kill in lane. Like sometimes you do get one, but you're aiming to just annoy the enemy and force out a bad recall from them, from harassing them down. So this is like playing into Yuumi's book like perfectly. Your AD carry is going to be staying alive more often, and you're going to be able to poke the enemy to the same and force those recalls at roughly the same rate as well. So beautiful. If your AD carry is doing rubbish, you've always got the option to go on to someone who's doing really well on your team. Basically, Yuumi is a version of Lulu, but Lulu can only buff auto attacking champion, whereas Yuumi, she works with everyone. So that's the difference between the two. Yuumi, unless Yuumi gets like nerfed dramatically again, she will always be better than Lulu, unless in an overall game composite, like in the overall game picture. But Lulu will be better than Yuumi if you can trust your Vayne or Kog'Maw. I hope that makes sense. So if you're playing a Lulu game and your AD carry is doing really, really badly, you're screwed the entire game. Whereas if you're playing Yuumi and your AD carry is doing really, really badly, just jump up to someone that's actually doing well. Easy win. So I've gone through these champions before. Sona's win rate is still extremely high. I was considering budging down Zyra, but I'm not prepared to do that yet. I do feel like she is still the best mage. And honestly, she is the only mage in the top two tiers. So Swain I don't really regard as a mage. I regard him more as a kind of a poke AP tank. Really weird category for him, but I think Zyra lost a tiny bit of power this patch, but she's still going to be incredibly good. Sona kind of wants a game with the Yuumi. You're not looking for kills in laning phase. It's just an added bonus if you do. so it doesn't really matter about enemy AD carries getting more HP. Soraka, it's kind of the same category as well. You're not really looking for a kill in lane, it's more just sustaining through it anyway. So once again, the same category there. And Nami's like fairly similar as well, at least very early. I mean, she has the highest kill potential out of the enchanters, so it probably affects her slightly more. But overall, AD carry is getting buffed. AD carry is more like to go in with your E and your W, better heal bounces. So it goes around and roundabouts really. And Blitzcrank tier 1, permaban him. if you want to play League of Legends, just permaban Blitzcrank. I hope this tier list helped you guys out. I'm willing to take some questions from Twitch chat if you guys have any questions about a couple of champions on the list maybe. But do bear in mind that the next couple of patches will have a bump in the road. I might get 1 or 2 champions wrong, hopefully not more than that. And I will update in the YouTube comments under the video if there is anything that needs to be changed. But I'm pretty certain that this is going to be correct for this patch, but the next patch is going to be spicy, really spicy. So look out for the next tier list when I do that one for 10.12. And if you're not already, make sure you follow on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. And if you're not watching on YouTube and you're not subscribed still, make sure you click the bell. And the people in Twitch chat, click my bell please, and subscribe. And if you do want to catch me playing other games other than League of Legends, I've got my secondary YouTube channel, Bizzleberry Extra, which you can find on my main channel, and then going to the right hand section and then click in like related channels or something. So lots of content for you guys to watch. Let's have a look at the questions in Twitch chat. Pull out like 3. Let's do 3 questions. Let's have a look. What about Volleybell? I was not prepared to put Volleybell. That's a big thing actually. I was not prepared to put Volleybell on this tier list as it's way too early. I'm not even entirely sure he's going to be support viable. I know there's going to be content creators that are going to make videos on Volibear support, but I'm not happy to say that he's going to be anywhere on this tier list. There'll be people playing him as support for sure. Just don't. What I'll say is don't get baited in by other content creators saying that it's going to be viable when it's way too early to even like consider that as an option, especially if you're interested in climbing in solo queue. So don't screw yourselves over in that regard. Give it a couple of weeks and then see what the situation is. But as something as risky to put on the tier list, I mean, at the moment, I'd probably place him at tier 5, but you know, we'll have to wait and see in terms of how strong he is in his primary position, the jungle position, and even in the solo lanes, and then take it from there. Let's take another question. Why is Zyra better than a Wraith or Brand? I don't know what you mean by a Wraith, but a Brand. Zyra is better than Brand because she provides a lot more utility than Brand. That is basically it. Brand used to be stronger than Zyra. He used to have much higher base damage, but they nerfed it, especially on his passive. The one thing that Brand would have over Zyra is the fact that he can do more damage than her overall. Particularly if the enemy has a lot of tanks and you're the only AP on the team, that is a good option to take Brand. Zyra has much more utility, much more CC, much more reliable in lane, easier to poke, easier to generate gold stacks in most cases, especially in high ELO. As predicting Brand's W is pretty easy, honestly, whereas predicting Zyra Q or E is harder. So yeah, that's the primary reason. What about Kled support? No, let's change this. Let's get this last question that would actually be maybe quite useful. What about Set support? Okay, I think that is a fair question to add because I have not put Set on this tier list. It is a champion that I do not recommend anyone playing. Like, I'm just gonna like throw that out there completely. I think Set is really good against Yuumi, but that is an extreme reason to play Set. I feel like in solo queue, you just poke him and then back off, poke him and then get off, back off. But I don't recommend playing him in solo queue, especially if you're looking for a tier list, you're looking for what champions to play. Yeah, I don't recommend you play Set at all. nor do I want to encourage it. What about Maokai? You can play Maokai if you have Maokai top lane experience. That would be your best bet. Although something like a Maokai plus a Lucian could be quite interesting with the Lucian buffs. But Maokai and some of the other champions I mentioned can be viable if you're learning the support role and you're coming from those solo lanes / jungles and wanting to learn the support role. That can be a really good tool for you to get going and then jump onto something in tier 2 or tier 1. With the buffs to, okay, we'll ask question then. With the buffs to Lucian and Vayne, don't you think that the lockdown supports would be on a better position, such as Leona and Nautilus? Well, I have put up Nautilus and Braum and Thresh. They have moved up a tier list from what they were before. I think, to answer your question again, next patch is when those champions are likely to get even stronger. The ones that use Guardian, and I think there's like the Tenacity rune might be getting changed. Kind of early days yet to say exactly what those changes are going to be, but the Resolve Tree runes are getting an overhaul. Well, overhaul's a bit of a dramatic word, but a decent change. So it's too early to buff them up yet, because yes, 1 or 2 champions have been buffed directly. AD carriers on the whole have been buffed a little bit across the board, but the next patch afterwards is where engaged supports are potentially going to shine in solo queue a lot more than potentially than the rest of the last 10 patches that we've had. So yeah, okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. I hope it helps you out for when the patch comes out on Thursday. If you do have any further questions regarding the tier list, then once this is uploaded to YouTube, then feel free to ask in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Other than that, good luck in solo queue and stay safe. Take care, guys.